Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. We were looking at functions in Python, and in this video we are going to understand the different types of arguments that we can pass to a function. So let us start. Now talking about functions, right? So when we define a function, it may have some parameters. These parameters are useful to receive values from outside of the function. Now, these parameters can be divided into two types. The first one is your formal arguments and the second is called your actual arguments. When we call a function, we should pass data or values to the functions, right? So when we are telling to the function that you have to receive these many values, that is termed as the formal argument. But when we actually call the function and pass the actual values on which the calculation is to be performed, they are called the actual arguments, right? So rather than studying this theoretically, let us move to our Visual Studio Code to understand the working of formal and actual arguments. So here I will be defining a function which let's say calculate the addition of two numbers, and let the numbers be a and b, right? So at this point of time, what this a and b represents, it is telling the function that you need two values in order to execute yourself, right? So now I have just formally told my function that you need two values. So these are your formal arguments, right? And let us just take a variable say c and pass a and b into it, and then let's say return the sum, right? So that is the complete definition. Now, in order to execute this function, what I have to do is I have to call add function, right? So let me call s because it's returning something. So I will be assigning my function add to variable s, and here I will be giving the value 20 and 10 to add, right? So when the function is told that you need two value, they are formal arguments. But when you actually give the values, that means when you say that a will be equal to 10 and b will be equal to 20, here they will be mapped according to their positions, right? So these are known as your actual arguments, right? You can change the value of actual arguments as and when necessary, right? So now if I print the value of s and run it, you will be getting 30 on your screens, right? So that is very fine and simple. So the main thing that we actually want to know over here is that these will be acting as the formal arguments and this will be acting as your actual argument, because here this is the values, right? If you even want, you can ask the users like this. You can say let's say d is equals to 10, and let's say e is equals to 20, right? And in place of writing the values, in place of values you can even write the variable name. So here d and e are the actual arguments, right? So if I run the code, the output will be again same as 30. You can even ask the user to enter the value of d and e. That will be also considered as your actual arguments, right? So that was very simple to understand. When you tell the function, that is formal, and when you actually give the values, that is the actual arguments. Now the actual arguments that are used in a function call are of four types. The first one is the positional argument, then the keyword arguments, default arguments, and variable length arguments, right? So all four of them have their own characteristics and working. So let us look at them one by one. So the first actual argument that we are going to study is the positional arguments, right? Now, positional arguments are argument passed to a function in correct positional order. Here, the number of arguments and their positions in the function definition should match exactly with the number and position of the argument in the function call. Right? So let me just define a function. Let's say the name of the function is name, and here, or let it be message, and here I will be giving values a and b. These are my formal arguments, and starting with the definition. So first of all, let me just write the docstring. Now this function will display a message, right? So this is a function that is going to display a message, right? So here I will be actually using, let us say, a variable, say msg, and here I will be concatenating these values, that is a and b, and I will be using a and b as strings, right? So the plus operator will work very fine. Then I will be printing the message, and the message is comma msg, right? So that is my function. Now, in order to show the values of positional arguments, we need to call this function. So I will be calling message with two string values. The first one is hello, right? And let the second one will be world. Right now, these are my two strings, right? So, in the positional arguments, how this formal and actual parameters actually work is, now these are my actual parameters. So my first parameter is hello, right? So hello will be mapped to a because a is having the first position, right? And the second parameter over here is world, and world will be mapped to b, right? So in this concatenation function, what I am going to do is I am concatenating the first value with the second value. That means hello and world. Let me just give a space over here also. So let it be something like this, right? So A will be converted into hello and B will be converted into world. Let us just run and verify it. So yes, hello is printing at the first place and world is printing at the second place because they are mapped according to their position. Now, if I just cut hello from here and paste it over here separated by a comma, and I have to remove this comma from here. Now I have just altered the value of my positional arguments. Now this time on your screen the message should be world hello. And why it is so? Because this time A will be mapped to world and B will be mapped to hello, right? So let us run and verify that also. So now on your screen, the answer is world hello. Now that is the working of your positional arguments because you haven't explicitly told the message function that this is the position of the arguments, right? So by default, how the mapping is to be done between the formal and the actual arguments, that will be based on the positions. So let me just comment the above code. And the next type of actual parameter that we are going to see is the keyword argument. Keyword argument, right? So what I'm going to do over here is I will be just copying the same code over here, right? And will be just editing the name of the function as name, and the message will also become name, right? And here I will be changing these variables to as first and last, because name has first name and last name, right? And let this be named as full name, right? This is very fine. And here also I will be writing the variable as full name. Very fine. Now, in keyword arguments, as we have seen in the positional arguments, I haven't mentioned any keyword, right? So they were picking up the position. But now this is a function which is the name function, and this is going to display a name over, it is going to display the full name, right? So in this particular case, this is the first value and this should be the last value, right? So if I pass over here my first name, right, separated by a comma, and write my last name and run the code, that is working very fine and my name is printing on the screen, right? So that is fine. But what if I do something like this? What if I say last is equal to Anjali? Remember, I am just swapping the values, right? And first is equal to, will this work? Let me just run the code and check out. And now you can see that my name has been printed in the reverse fashion. It is Sharma Anjali, right? So what is the significance of keyword arguments? In the previous example, the values were mapped based upon the positions. But maybe that you are not, working upon the positions, then at that point of time, you can provide the formal arguments as the keyword so that the values will be mapped accordingly, right? So keyword arguments are those arguments that identify the parameters by their name, right? Here, for example, I have changed the name like that last name will be Anjali and the first name will be Sharma. And remember that the ordering of, the parameters is not necessary when you are using the keyword arguments, right? So in this way, even though we change the order of the argument, there will not be any problem as the parameter name will guide where to store the value, right? So that was the working of keyword argument. Now let us move towards the next example, which will be your next type of argument, that is the default argument, right? So in order to understand the default argument, let me just make a function again, right? So first of all, the heading, that is we are going to study the default argument, right? And here I will be making a function that is actually going to set the values of the parameters as default value, right? So let me just simply make a function named s, and in this I will be talking about let's say item, and the next value will be price, right? And these are my formal parameters, right? And here I will be saying that the price is 100 rupees, right? So I have set this default value over here. Now in this function, what I am going to do, I will be printing the statement that the price, or say the item, and print item over here, the item is, and the price is, and print the price over here, right? So let the code be something like this, a very simple function of just 2 lines, right? So it is just printing the item and its price, right? So when we are going to actually call this function, right, when we actually call this function to execute, I will be writing f, And in the bracket, what I will be going to do, I will be using the value of, I will be using the keyword argument and say that item is equals to, let's say, apples. Right? Now, if I run the code, you can see the item is apples and the price is 100. Right? So there is not any necessity to provide the value of price in the actual parameters. Right? So that is working like this. Now, what if I do use the keyword argument and give the price as 200. Now let us see what happens. So if I give price as 200, you can see that 200 overrides 100. But if you do not provide anything over here, then by default the value will be taken as the value that you have specified in your formal arguments, right? So in default arguments, we can mention some default value for the function parameters in the definition, right? So here the first argument is item, which do not have any default value, but the second argument is price, which is having a default value as 100, right? So if you do not provide anything in your actual parameter, then the default value is considered. Otherwise, if you provide something with the help of your keyword arguments, then that value will be printed. Now, the last argument that we need to understand is the variable length argument. Now that is very important and interesting also. So the last one is variable length argument. Now talking about variable length argument. Sometimes the programmer does not know how many values a function may receive. In that case, the programmer cannot decide how many arguments to be given in the function definition. For example, if a programmer is writing a function to add two numbers, then the arguments will be two value, let's say A and B, right? But what if that particular programmer now wants to add five numbers or 10 numbers? Now that will be an issue, and at that point of time you have to go to that proper definition of your function and modify the total number of formal arguments, right? So in order to actually work upon that particular matter, what we are going to do is we are going to use argument with an asterisk sign. Now how it works, let us see. So here I am writing a function which calculates the sum of five numbers, right? It takes sum of five numbers. So now I will be just giving it a name as add, and here I will be giving the first argument as the first arg, right? This is the first argument, and after that, because I do not know that how many numbers my programmer wants to add, right? So here I will be using an asterisk sign with args because I do not know how many arguments are required, right? So this is something which is going to actually work with our situation when we do not know that how many numbers we want to add. Have a print statement which says calculating the sum of f argument, right, numbers. Let me just completely write the code and then you're going to understand what I'm going to do over here is. Now sum's identity is 0. Now for I in, because this args will be a sequence, right? So in args, because this will be acting as a sequence, and s is equals to s plus I, right? So this is calculating the sum of all numbers. So getting out of the for loop and print the sum is, and the value of sum will be s over here. Now for executing this particular code, we need to call it, right? So let us have a first print statement and say sum of two numbers, right? Sum of two numbers. So call add 2 is the sum of two numbers and those two numbers are 20. Let me just run the code and see what I've got the answer. So here you can see that the first argument is taken as it is, which is calculating the sum of first argument. So it is working as the sum of two numbers over here, right? And after that, I have passed two numbers over here and the sum is printed 30 right now, right? So there is no need to put a b c d over here, right? So that is flexible enough. Now let me just copy and paste the complete code again over here and let us say calculating the sum of five numbers, right? So let the first argument be 5 this time, and here I have given two numbers, and let us add few more to it, right? So now I have five numbers, and if I run the code, then you can see that calculating the sum of five numbers and I got 150 as the sum. So this is something which is making our code programmer friendly, right? Because in this particular example, the programmer need not to worry if the number of arguments that increases considerably. You need not to modify your code again and again and modify the definition again and again, and you can pass any values as you want. The next thing that I want to tell you is that the variable length arguments can be actually programmed in two manners. First, that is this one which we have seen just now, and the second one is with the help of keyword arguments, right? So what this keyword argument does it, that keyword variable length argument is an argument that can accept any number of values provided in the format of keys and values. If we want to use a keyword variable length argument, then we can declare it with the help of two asterisk sign before the argument. Now here this double asterisk keyword arguments is called the keyword variable argument. Now this argument internally represents a dictionary object. A dictionary stores data in the form of key and value pairs. It means when we provide values to keyword variable length argument, we can pass multiple pairs of values using the keywords. So let us see an example and understand how this keyword argument works. So first of all, I will be making a function which is again adding some numbers, right? How many numbers we do not know. So here I will be taking my first argument, right? And along with this, I will be taking this keyword arguments, right? So it can also take any number of arguments, but that will be in the form of a key value pair, right? So what I'm going to do over here is first of all making use of my first argument, right? So in the print statement, writing calculating the sum of, let's say, first argument numbers, right? So if I give 2 over here as my first argument, this print statement is going to print calculating the sum of two numbers, right? So that is my first print statement. Now what I'm going to do over here, as we know that this keyword argument will be creating a dictionary object, right? So this will be converted into a dictionary, right? So in order to access that, right, I will be making use of the method that is available with dictionary, that is items. So I will be making a for loop because dictionary have two values, key and value, right? Key value pair. So one variable is for my key and other variable is for my value, right? In keyword arguments dot items, right? Because with this I will be accessing both the keys and the values of my dictionary. Now let us print the statement like this. So the first, let me just actually code it, and then after that you will be able to understand that what I'm actually doing over here. Dot format, right? So this is some positional values of format I comma j, right? After that, what I will be doing is I will be just simply calculating the sum of the arguments. So s is equals to 0, then for I in this time that will be acting as values because I need the sum of the values, right? So for loop will be working like this as we do in dictionary. So s is equal to s plus I, right? And outside this for loop, print the sum is, and here the value of s. So now what will be the expected output of this particular code? So here, in order to execute it, what I will be requiring? I will be requiring to call this add function. So by calling it, let me calculate the sum of two numbers. So here my first argument will be 2, right? And now the arguments will be keyword arguments, right? As we have seen in the previous section of this video only. So first is equal to 10. This is my first number, and second is equal to 20, right? So if I scroll a little bit above, you can see that this is how we use the keyword arguments, right? As first and last name, right? So we are using the same concept over here, right? Now what will be the output? Calculating the sum of, let me just run and then show you here. So how this output came on your screen is calculating the sum of two numbers. So this is coming out from this, and this FRG is 2 over here. This FRG is 2 over here, very fine. Now what I have done, I have accesses these particular arguments which are stored in form of a dictionary, right? How I use them? I just called a for loop over the items, that is the key and the values of my dictionary, and just printed the key value along with the key along with the value. So the first number is 10, the second number is 20, that is printed via this particular print statement. After that, I have just simply added the values, that is 10 and 20, and just printed the sum out of this for loop, right? So in order to verify that this is stored in form of a dictionary, you can even check it by printing the key args, right? And if I run this code again, you can see that the arguments that we have provided in the function is actually stored in form of a dictionary, right? So that was something regarding what types of argument a function can take and how these particular arguments are useful while calculating or making any changes in our function. So I hope that you understood the working of arguments in function, and for more such videos on Python, stay tuned to my channel. Thank you.